News Radio 600 Kogo, welcome to your weekend, and it is San Diego Business Weekend. I'm Sully. Let's kick this thing off. Great to have you along today. Boy, if there was ever a week that you needed some calming and to be talked off the cliff, it was this week. Coming up today, Christina Gustin, UBS Financial, is going to help you get through what we're going through in the markets. Also, Phil Molnar from the UT is going to join us. Patrick DeHaan from GasBuddy.com. And Ann Marbarger from Padres Pedal. San Diego Business Weekend's on the air. Okay. Everybody calm down a minute. Because what you saw this week in the stock market was nothing more than a reaction to an ISM piece of data. Now, the ISM is the Institute for Supply Management, and what that means is it takes a look, a 50,000-foot view look, if you were, to take a look at what happens behind the scenes, behind when you go purchase something at Walmart or when you purchase something at Costco or anywhere else. You go behind the scenes, and there's a purchasing manager, and behind the purchasing manager is a production manager, the guy that makes the stuff, and he makes the stuff based upon orders coming out. Well, all of those things are open-air, pre-market indicators as to what's going on in the overall economy. And remember, the stock market is not the economy. The economy is one thing, and the GDP is the report card of the economy. The stock market is another thing. Now, the stock market is certainly affected by the economy, and probably vice versa because there's a wealth effect from the stock market. But remember, only 50% of America participates in the stock market. So when you see a stock market cave like we saw happen on Wednesday and on Tuesday, it's not as an effect literally the economy. You may be surprised at what happens when you see such sort of action in the market. And let me just tell you this. There was it's an ugly start to October, okay? There's still hope. All right, early Tuesday, the Dow Jones boasted a 130-point gain Tuesday morning. The S&P and the NASDAQ, after the news on the ISM manufacturing number, okay, pulled back and we lost we were over 2% at one point, ended up closing down about 1.6%. Wasn't such a bad deal. 400 points seems like a lot in the Dow. It's not really a lot, but it's a big number. It was the weakest manufacturing report in a decade, and the investment mood was shattered. It just happened. Fear and greed, remember? So that said, if you think in terms of what happens in October, which is the most volatile month of the year, historically speaking, it doesn't necessarily mean that all is lost for the remainder of the month and the year. There have been 14 trading days in which the S&P has fallen by at least 1% in the first trading day in October, which happened this week. But the S&P gained an average of 4% for the rest of October when it had such a bad start. And it finished up 10% for the quarter. So historically speaking, it's not such a bad deal. I would rather take a 1% decline today if it meant a 7% gain later. All right? Now, I'm going to talk to Christina Gustin about that. The other issue I want to talk about is the gas prices and look at it is one of those things where the average price a gallon a self-serve gasoline in San Diego County rose to the highest since June 27th, 2015, increasing to $4.10 a gallon. Average price has risen 13 times over the last 15 days, 45 cents, including 7 cents just this week. So we got to touch on that. But I want to calm everybody's fears a little bit and start off by talking to Christina Gustin from UBS Financial, RKG Wealth Management. Christina, thanks again for giving us your time as you do every weekend. And I know you're busy with the kids and everything else, but welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Good morning.
Okay, so here's my question for you. My first question is a personal nature. How did you ever turn your phone off this week? Because you were frustrated. Because your phone was blowing up.
I have to tell you, some of the research I was reading this week, not from UBS analysts, really made me want to jump out the window. The level of hysteria in the news right now is this week has been really, kind of impressive.
I agree.
And you're going to think I'm boring, but I really believe that it's not that bad, right?
Look at
think we all need to calm down, like you said.
I think so too. And keep in mind, we are what are we, 3% away from all-time highs on all three indices?
Thank you.
I mean,
Right.
the Dow's off, I think 2.3% from its record close set on July 15th. The record close was 27,359. So we're really close. So we're in striking distance of all-time high in the S&P. NASDAQ's off a bit, but NASDAQ is off because of the the U.S.-China trade deal. And I'll tell you why, because of course tech stocks are affected most because, what gets made in China, the little parts inside your microcomputer, which is called a cell phone. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's the biggest reason. Now, getting past the volatility and the emotion, this was a knee-jerk reaction to the ISM, both figures that came out on Wednesday and on Thursday. We had a decent employment number. It wasn't exactly what we thought, but we had 135,000 jobs. It's better than a poke in the eye with a sharp stick. Look, I think the piece of this thing that people need to realize is that you don't know you're in a recession until after it's over. So we may have been in a recession for a while. We may be in one now. But I think I got to agree with you, Christina. Things just ain't that bad.
So growth is slowing. I think we all agree on that, but that doesn't mean it's stopping. And I think that's the message that really gets muddled in the media. It's not reversing either, by the way. This is a time, the third quarter is behind us now. We're headed towards the end of the year. So for investors, like for my clients, often we're doing our quarterly reviews right now, and we're looking at everyone's asset allocation. We're looking at their balance sheet and saying, is everything set up in an optimal way? We're checking back with the financial plan right now, and that's what a lot of fund managers are also doing in terms of the asset allocation and rebalancing. So October tends to be really volatile, and then towards the end of the year you get tax loss harvesting. So things are going to stay bumpy. I don't have any expectation that they're going to be smooth. I think in terms of the open air indicators, like you said, we're kind of walking down this path of things are slowing down. But they're not coming to a screeching halt. Far from it. Yeah,
and I think that's a lesson to be had here, because I know people panic, and I looked at my own portfolio this week, and I'm going, man, I lost a fair amount of dough that one day. But look, I think there's a lesson. I want you to talk about it. But there is some importance of keeping money at risk. Correct? You can't just, because if you pull your money out on days like we had this week and don't put it back in, or if you pull it out and forget to put it back in, or only put it in when it's going up, you end up with very, very meager gains versus substantial gains in history, correct?
Oh, yeah. I mean, listen, to time the market, you have to be right twice. And the probability of doing that perfectly in any move up or down is so low. It's not worth it. And like you said earlier, in order to get the gain of 7%, even if there's a downtrend at the beginning of October, you have to be invested. You have to stay in. So that's the message, throughout the year that we've been delivering to people is stay invested. Be cautious. We're much more heavily rated towards income generating investments right now than we are growth, just because we are concerned. And if there is a significant downturn, at least you're still getting the dividends and interest in the meantime. So we may be more cautious, but we're still definitely invested.
Hey, by the way, Christina Gustin joins us. She is with UBS Financial and RKG Wealth Management. I have to ask you, because I get asked this and I don't ever know what to say. When we see gas prices go up like we have, look at, and I need to say this out loud. Maybe 2% of my portfolio is day traded. I know I talk about on Big Biz Show and such. I only have just a very few stocks that I actually look at because the rest of it's being managed. But one thing I do say and have said on Big Biz Show and on this show is that sometimes when you're getting your rear end kicked at the pump, I have personally gone out and purchased a couple shares of gas stock to mitigate that. It makes me start thinking this. Is there a defensive strategy in place? Has there ever been a defensive strategy in place when gas prices go up? Because in my mind, and I think in the minds of everyone, when the price of a gallon of gas goes up, it's basically raising taxes on all of us. We don't have a choice. There is nothing you can do about it if you use a car to get to work. Right? So, has there ever been a defensive strategy talked about? I mean, my defensive strategy, it seems crude. And I haven't done a spreadsheet on it. It just seems like, well, I'm making money on ExxonMobil. I don't mind paying an extra, 50 cents a gallon, right? Is there a defensive strategy?
It's a funny commodity because it's in your face every time you fill up your tank. I think the only defensive strategy is to drive an electric vehicle. But, in the past, I think that we have definitely used oil stocks or oil-related investments because of the high dividends that they pay. But with the price of oil coming down so much lately as it has, that's been a tough argument. You're losing principal.
Plus, it's a commodity. Yeah, if you're investing in exchange-traded funds like oil exchange-traded funds, that's a tough one because it's just a commodity. Last of all, I want you to come on the air with us at some point and spend a half hour with us talking about dividend stocks, because there are two camps. Just like there's two camps in investing. Some people are only real estate people and some people are only equities people. There's also two camps with stocks, dividend stocks versus thinking that it's voodoo. I'll reserve my opinion until you come on the air, but I want you to talk about the philosophy behind that and the philosophy behind a balanced portfolio. Because in my opinion, if you're putting the emphasis on the wrong side, you're not going to get the most out of your money, correct?
Correct. No, I'd love to do that. It'd be fun.
Good stuff. Christina, thank you so much. Christina Gustin, UBS Financial, RKG Wealth Management, as usual, the smartest person in the room, especially when I'm around, by a lot. So let's talk a little bit about those gas prices, because Patrick DeHaan, Chief Analyst at GasBuddy.com, who you hear on Kogo all the time, is going to be joining me. I get him for a full segment to talk about everything going on at the pump, and you can too. But I can tell you right now, if we can get Patrick to tell us that this is all going to be temporary, because I think it is temporary, we're in good shape. This all comes down to a number of things. I'll tell you about the gas prices. Also coming up, we're going to talk to Phil Molnar from the UT about a shack for rent. Maybe you've heard of it. San Diego Business Weekend. News Radio 600. News Radio 600 Kogo. San Diego Business Weekend is on the air. I'm Sully, your host. Thanks for swinging by today. You can catch me every morning on the San Diego Morning News with Ted and LaDonna, right here on News Radio 600 Kogo. Also, San Diego Business Weekend airs Saturday at 9 a.m., Sunday at 12 p.m. I'm over on KUSI. Good morning, San Diego, talking all things business with Paul Rudy and Lauren Finney. And of course, The Big Biz Show, a national television program and 110 million TV homes every night. We're also on radio right here on iHeartRadio and Armed Forces Radio. With Rusty Nails, you go to bigbizshow.com for more information on that. Always follow me at Sully Speaks, either on Twitter, Instagram, and such, or just go to kogo.com, keyword Sully, where you can watch the TV version of this radio program. That's right. The minute the show is off the air this morning on Saturday or Sunday, depending which day you're listening, Mary puts up the new show. Me and producer Lady Mary. So there you go. All right. Let's talk about gas prices, because let's face it, they've been in the news all week long. I have a philosophy about what's going on with gas, and I would love to run it by Patrick DeHaan. But the average price of a gallon of self-serve regular gasoline in San Diego County rose Tuesday to its highest amount. Actually, I think it was Wednesday. To its highest amount, increasing 3.6 cents to $4.10. Here's the bottom line. The rising prices, I believe, are a supply and demand issue because of this Chevron and Marathon refinery thing in LA County I was reading, and I think there was an unplanned maintenance deal. There's also the attack on Saudi Arabia just recently, and there's also the fact that if you can only get a summer blend because there's diminished capacity from LA, then you're stuck with more expensive gas in the first place. Patrick, will you please break it down, because the rest of us we can't even see what you see. Patrick DeHaan, again, head of petroleum analysis at Gas Buddy. Patrick, how close am I to being accurate on this?
Well, I don't even know why you need me anymore. I think you nailed on its head.
Good. I'm
well
glad.
Done.
So it's a manufacturing deal.
It really is. It's not uncommon to see a refinery go down here and there. But within the last week and a half, we've had 4 of them all in the same state, which is unheard of. So, get your conspiracy hat out and say they're all planning this. That's not really the case, but it certainly does create quite a pinch. In fact, data that came out Wednesday from the Energy Information Administration highlighted a big drop in how much gasoline there is in the West Coast. And the California Energy Commission backed that up a day later. Inventories of gasoline in California of your CARB-mandated fuel are 30% lower than a year ago.
Well, so that obviously that's a piece of it. Now, here's my question, though. You know, like the power grid for SDG&E, Sempra, and Cal Edison has a body called CAL-ISO, which is basically the air traffic control for the power grid that shifts the grid where we need it the most, and that really affects prices. Is there not such a thing with respect to oil? Because it seems like if there was, and I'm not for more government, believe me, but if there were some sort of a self-governing body amongst the petroleum refineries that says, look, we're going to be down from October 1 to November 30, you know, why can't they cycle these so you don't have, to your point, 4 of them down at the same time?
Well, you know, this is in addition to the normal maintenance.
Right.
So the 4 refineries are unexpected, and, you know, it'd be lovely to have a catch-all. The point is this: the only way around this circumstance is if there's additional refining capacity that could pick up the slack when this happens. And I think most Californians would probably realize that the environment in the state is very hard. It's almost anti-refinery. So we get that this stuff happens, but did you know back in 1983 when the number of refineries peaked, there were 55 of them. There's less than half of 55 now on the West Coast. So we've shrunk capacity and kind of put ourselves in this predicament because high taxes, carbon taxes, and because now California mandates this CARB-mandated fuel throughout much of the year. So California is almost as isolated as it gets. Nobody really can come to the rescue of California because these various policies. And if you wanted to open another refinery, well, you know, good luck. Maybe in 15 years you'll get somewhere.
So let me ask you this. Is it taxes that's killing us? Is it environmental concerns that are killing us? And when I say killing us, I'm talking about, you know, if you look at a gas price temperature map on gasbuddy.com, you look no further than the fact that we are always a different color than the rest of the world because we pay more money per gallon. Is it just the taxes, or is there any one answer to it? I guess my question should be.
Taxes are typically pretty constant, unless there's a percentage-based tax, which still we're going to be talking about pennies per gallon here. So it's not really taxes, though California does have the highest in the country. I think really what you're coming down to is 2 things. A lack of refining capacity, that is. I mean, normally on a perfect day, everything's humming along. But as soon as one goes down, the second problem enters the room, which is that California's on its own unique blend of gasoline. So even if there were enough refineries, if they didn't go down, the problem then is that this is a special blend, we call it.
Yeah. And
refineries around the country don't produce this because the third issue, I guess, is pipelines don't connect California to the rest of the country. You know, here in Chicago, you could have a refinery go down. In fact, we did in 2015, and we saw an explosive 80-cent a gallon increase. But within a few days, Gulf Coast refineries started sending gasoline up to Chicago. But the same backup, if you will, does not happen in California. There's really no backup available unless it's refineries all the way over in Asia, who I'm sure right now are loading up cargoes of gasoline, but that still takes a couple weeks.
So my gut reaction when I heard you talk this week to Kogo and a number of other places during the week here. Once again, Patrick DeHaan joins us here from GasBuddy.com. He is the head of petroleum analysis, and he really is the go-to guy here in all of Southern California and probably the nation for data on gasoline. My first reaction when I heard you earlier this week getting interviewed was this has got to be short term, because once the manufacturing gets kicked in, once the summer blends over, then we go back to normal gas prices, correct? Or is there always something looming for us?
Well, I mean, there are issues here and there that are looming, but you're right. The sky-high prices work in economics to attract additional supply. And like I said, that supply is starting to flow into California. We saw a total of 200,000 barrels of gasoline flow into California last week. And I'm sure this week, we don't have the numbers yet, we'll see another week that gasoline is coming into the area. The other thing is, yes, these refinery issues are always temporary, unless, of course, it's 2015 and the refinery physically blows up. These are temporary issues. And the good news is we do see light at the end of the tunnel now. We didn't earlier this week. The increases should wind down here over the weekend, and then by next week, prices stabilize, and then they start going the other direction.
Hey, Patrick, I've got a question for you I've never asked you before. You know, we always talk about oil independence with respect to a country. Now, at one point, we got about 54% of our oil between the U.S. and Canada and Mexico, and we were dependent on other countries' oil like the Middle East. And I realized that oftentimes you hear sort of a net zero approach to importing oil into this country. What about California? Are we energy dependent? We've got some offshore oil rigs outside of LA County there. I know there's some up in Santa Barbara. Are we independent here? How much are we depending on oil from other places, specifically in this country? I realize we get some oil from other countries. But what about other places in this country? Do you have any numbers on that, or do you guys keep track of that?
Well, the number one question there. That's a really good one, and I'm glad I looked up some of the facts earlier this week. California itself produces about 500,000 barrels a day of oil. It also receives a lot from Alaska, so that's not really independent, right? You're relying on Alaska to ship Alaska North Slope crude oil all the way down to California. It takes a week. But California really, aside from what you get from Alaska and the 500,000 barrels you produce every day, much of what you see comes in the form of very large crude carriers, VLCCs or ultra large crude carriers. And of the Saudi attacks, there is something to be mentioned because California is the state that relies on Saudi Arabia the most.
So if you think in terms of that, do our consumption habits affect the price for the rest of the country? Because let's face it, California is a pretty big gas guzzler. We're a big state. So do we, because it's a supply and demand business, is our state sometimes blamed for higher oil prices coming from other parts of the world?
I can't say so. You know, it would be like blaming the U.S. I mean, as a whole, the U.S. is the world's largest oil consumer. We consume about 20 to 21 million barrels a day. But broken down by state, you know, you really can't say that because of California's reliance on Saudi Arabia that it pushes global prices up. I think everyone's in it together, and you know, it doesn't really. Yes, California is a huge consumer, but I don't think that in of itself is something that would drive oil prices. That would drive gas prices, especially when there is a kink in the chain like there is now. I would say if California somehow could magically cut their demand in half overnight, these refinery kinks would be almost irrelevant.
So here's my question, and I hate to ask you this, and I think anybody listening to us here on San Diego Business Weekend doesn't want me to ask this because it'll make us all feel bad. Once again, Patrick DeHaan, head of petroleum analysis from Gas Buddy. Where's the cheapest gas in the country?
Boy, Sully, you're really, you're painful here.
Well, because I know we're the most expensive. I just want to know who I can blame, who I can yell at, and who I can, point and laugh at. Who's got the cheapest gas?
There should be a warning on this program here in a minute. What you're about to hear may offend you. I just talked to a radio station in Texas, and I looked this up, and there's a station outside Dallas that's charging, if you're ready for it, $1.99 a gallon.
Yeah, that's not good. Yeah, $1.99 a gallon in Texas. Well, it is Texas, let's face it, Patrick, because you know what? That's it is the oil state. Hey, man, thank you so much. Once again, I appreciate your wisdom and your time, and we'll hopefully not have to talk to you for a couple of weeks. Although I enjoy talking to you. It's usually during crisis times. Patrick DeHaan, GasBuddy.com. All right, we got a great organization called Padres Pedal the Cause here in San Diego. We're going to talk to Ann Marbarger in a minute about what's going on there just in a few weeks. Also coming up, Phil Molnar from the UT. It's San Diego Business Weekend. I'm Sully. News Radio 600 Kogo. San Diego Business Weekend on the air. I'm Sully. Welcome to your weekend. And what a week it's been in the business world. It's time to talk about something that's going to make you smile, because the market either made you cringe or hang on for dear life this week. So I've invited my good friend Ann Marbarger, who is the CEO of Padres Pedal the Cause. And the reason I like Ann so much is because this girl is dyed to the wool for this organization. Padres Pedal is making huge impact in the quest for a world without cancer. And of course, you can go to gopedal.org to find more about it. But she is the cause executive director. I call her the CEO, but she's actually the cause executive director. And she literally moved here to San Diego to lead the organization. So I want to bring her on and talk a little bit about this because it's coming up, whereby you can get involved, and you don't even have to be an avid bike rider to get involved in this thing. And thank you so much for swinging by again. Good to talk to you.
Good to talk to you too. Thanks, Sully. Good to be here.
So let's talk about the event weekend first of all, because I want to get this on the table so we can spend a little bit of time. It is Saturday, November 16th at Petco Park, downtown San Diego so far. And there it kicks off, I think, with a 5K walk in front of the Hilton. You got spin classes that day and everything else. But talk about everything from top to bottom that's going to happen. And then we'll talk about what's going on specifically with respect to how people can get involved.
Okay, of course, yeah. So you're right. It's Saturday, November 16th. Everything starts and ends at Petco Park. We have 4 cycling routes. They're all a ride. It's not a race. You can come on your mountain bike or your cruiser or your road bike, but we have a 25-mile, a 55, an 88, and a 100-mile route, and those all go over the Coronado Bridge. And then we have 4 spin classes starting at 10 a.m. on the hour, and they each feature a different spin studio in town. Got the Rush, Cycle Bar, Spark Cycle, and then we also have the 5K that you mentioned, and that is family friendly. You can bring your kids in a stroller, you can walk, you can run, you can have them do it with you. It's flat. It goes along the Embarcadero and finishes on center field. And then we also have a kids challenge for kids ages 3 to 12. They can bring their scooter or their bikes or tricycles and ride around in front of Petco Park and then finish on the field.
I'll tell you what. So this year's going to be exciting for me personally, and I'll tell you why. Because I've already talked to former Chief of Police Shelley Zimmerman, and I've talked to Mayor Faulkner, and I think I've got them talked into riding again this year. And the reason is that we're all doing the ride from San Francisco to San Diego this year for Challenged Athletes Foundation in a couple of weeks. But I told them, because last year they got out of shape in 3 weeks, I said this week we should continue to train and do the Padres pedal. And then after I get done, I'll go on stage and with the band and play. And I'll tell you why this is so important. Number one, because it's a great cause. But number two, I'm getting a full knee replacement Monday on the 18th. So this will be my last chance to ride for the year. So I'm super excited about this year, and I'm going to make it a big spectacle with those two to make sure they get out there. Talk about exactly what you guys do, because you call it a world without cancer. This is about accelerating collaborative research. I want to talk about, let's see how the sausage is made a little bit, because you're a little bit different than most organizations. You're definitely making a bigger impact because of the way you guys use your money. Talk about that.
Yeah, so San Diego is home to some of the best research organizations in the world, and we have created a mechanism to bring those institutions together. So 100% of our fundraising dollars stay in San Diego. It all goes to the mission. It goes to 4 institutions. So we fund the Salk Institute, Sanford Burnham Previs, Rady Children's Hospital, and Moore's Cancer Center at UC San Diego. And specifically, we don't just give them each an individual check and let them do their own research. We fund specific collaborative grants among these institutions. So we bring a basic researcher together from either Salk or Sanford Burnham, along with a clinical researcher or care provider from Moore's Cancer Center or Rady Children's Hospital. So they're bringing different technologies, different approaches, different data, clinical and basic data, to approach complex, all types of cancers. We've funded 5 clinical trials as well, along with 54 of these collaborative grants. So not only are we advancing basic translational research, but we're also having a direct impact here on patient lives in San Diego.
I want to also point you to the website, gopedal.org, where all the information is available, including how to register, everything on the event weekend. I just noticed my good friend Bob Hassan is on your front page there. I don't know if you know Bob or not, but he's the guy with the headband doing the fist bump on the front. So Hassan, if you're listening, I don't know how you talked him into doing that. But Hassan's a great keynote speaker, by the way. Ex-neighbor of mine and a fantastic guy. Did you pick that on purpose? Did you know him?
So So I did not know him. I identified him after we selected this photo. But the significance of this photo that you're talking about is that he's fist pumping our founder, Bill Komen, who's a lymphoma survivor who created this whole thing. And they're both wearing yellow jerseys because if you raise $5,000 or more for cancer research at Petal, you get a yellow jersey. So,
I see. There you go.
Yeah. So he's a big advocate, and it looks like he's a good friend of Bill's too.
Hassan's a great guy, and he's a fantastic public speaker, keynote speaker. So if you can, I don't know his website, but I'll try to look it up before we get done here. All right, real quickly before we get out of here, talk about registration, how to participate, volunteering, and all that stuff, because this is what it's all about. We got to get money in the door.
We do. So you can register at our website, www.gopetal.org. I already covered all the different ways you can participate, from cycling, spinning, walk or running, kids challenge, or you can volunteer. And the details are on the website, but you pay a registration fee and you get some really good perks. Everybody gets a jersey or a running shirt, a water bottle, a bag, free food and beverage. We're going to have some good drinks and food at the park afterwards. So go to our website to learn more. You can also reach out to me. I'm Ann at gopetal.org if you have specific questions. But the more people we get registered, the more money we raise for cancer research.
All right, very good. And by the way, it'll be a great weekend, and I'll be hanging out, bothering Ann the entire day, asking her for personal favors because, again, it'll be my last day of writing for the rest of the year, so I want to make sure it's all about me, right, Ann? No, honestly though, it's kind of life changing. You spend a day doing this, and it really truly is life changing. So, Ann, thank you so much. This is not the last time we're going to hear from you before the event, but I just want to remind everyone, if you want to get involved, register now, and you can do so at gopetal.org. And I will tell you, if you can spare the time for the morning or the day on Saturday, November 16th, it'll be a great day for you, and it's usually gorgeous outside that weekend. So, Ann, thank you so much. Best of luck and great job out there.
Thanks so much, Sully.
All right, talk to you soon.
Have a good one.
All right, very good. So there you are. By the way, my good friend Hassan, he helps people discover how honor can transform their lives and organizations. He wrote a book called The Business of Honor, and it's bobhassan.com. I need to have him on the air with us. bobhassan.com. But the reason we went down that road is I was looking at the Padres Pedal the Cause website, and there's Hassan on the front page. In fact, if you want to see what he looks like, go to kogo.com, keyword Sully, and watch the TV version of San Diego Business Weekend, where you can see it after we're off the air on the weekends. Mean producer Lady Mary puts up the video. So go to kogo.com, keyword Sully. Of course, he's right there on the front page of gopetal.org as well. I want to give you a little bit of news before we get to talk to Phil Molnar from the UT, or as they like to call it nowadays, the San Diego Union-Tribune. So guess what? My good friend Ted Garcia in the San Diego Morning News, who I'm on with every morning, global meat consumption is on the rise. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because we have sort of a unhealthy obsession with alt meat. This alt meat obsession has gone to the lengths of every time we see an alt meat story, we need to cover it. But apparently, global regular meat consumption is on the rise, especially in the U.S., which currently makes up about $270 billion of a $1.4 trillion global meat industry. Analysts believe that that creates a huge market opportunity for alt meat. How so, Sully, you might ask? It's called flexitarians. A flexitarian is when you add 5 food groups to your diet, not taking away any. So you've got your fruit and veggies, you got your whole grains, you got your dairy, you've got your meat, and you've got your alt meat. And then, of course, many people, like Chris Merrill, have an extra food group beyond that called dessert or pumpkin spice lattes. I personally have 5 food groups. My 5th group is desperation, which is also my favorite color. So actually, there's 3 reasons why consumers could be biting into the alt meat deal. It's animal welfare, health and wellness, and environmental impact. The other thing I want to talk about also is, have you heard about the John G. Watson Quick Pitch Competition? That's happening in San Diego. 300 local startups applied to compete in San Diego for the most popular pitch competition. And 10 finalists end up on stage later this month. $75,000 in cash altogether. The first prize gets $50,000, but it's not the winnings necessarily that get startups revved up for the event. The competition has a history of selecting startups that go to raise millions of dollars from local and out-of-town venture investors. So, by the way, Quick Pitch Quick Pitch was founded 10 years ago by angel investor group Tech Coast Angels, which, by the way, was founded right here in San Diego. So really cool stuff. And last of all, I talked this week about this, and I got a ton of people asking me about it. So I thought I should probably say something. And that's about the Jack in the Box taco story, because you guys sent me emails all week about it. So I just thought it's worth talking about again. Jack in the Box is contributing to the U.S. economy. And it's because of the taco. The Jack in the Box taco, by the way, appeared on the menu in 1950, okay? Inclusive of the burgers and fries and stuff like that back then. But it's basically a tortilla wrapped around a beef filling that's dunked in a fryer topped with American cheese and sort of like a little pocket of goodness here. More than 1,000 times a minute, someone bites into a taco. Guess what? 550 more million tacos a year. That's 1,000 tacos a minute. That's roughly $277 million a year, roughly the GDP of the British Virgin Islands. Thank you, Jack in the Box. All right. Patrick DeHaan coming up. San Diego Business Weekend. News Radio 600 Kogo. Welcome to your weekend, San Diego Business Weekend, News Radio 600 Kogo. I'm Sully. Great to have you along today. Normally finding me every morning with Ted and LaDonna on San Diego Morning News, and then over to KUSI on Good Morning San Diego. And then our national television program, The Big Biz Show, every night, nationwide, coast to coast, 110 million broadcast television homes and 150 radio stations, broadcast right here on iHeartRadio, as well as in radio stations and TVs nationwide. Go to bigbizshow.com. You find myself and Rusty Nails there. And you can follow me at Sully Speaks everywhere on social media. And, of course, right here on Kogo at kogo.com, keyword Sully, where we feature some of the stories I talk about every day here on the San Diego Morning News on News Radio 600 Kogo, as well as this show here. And if you're listening to us as you're driving around Southern California this weekend, when you get home, you can actually watch this show at kogo.com, keyword Sully, because right after we get off the air, we post the television version, because this show is shot at the Jump Television Studios here in sunny San Diego, California. My good friend Phil Molnar. I said it was Patrick DeHaan because he was with Gas Buddy. He was on with you earlier today. But it's actually Phil Molnar, who I really like, and he adds so much to Kogo, and he's a terrific writer with the UT, which is now called the San Diego Union-Tribune. But there was a story this week that caught the eye of everybody because it went viral. And we covered it here a number of times. And it was about the $1,000 shed, the 200 square foot $1,000 shed in University Heights, a tiny studio apartment that got the attention of Reddit users who felt that the requirements were a little too steep for the small price, as Philip wrote. Phil, once again, man, I don't know how you sniff these things out, but I read I've been born and raised in this town, and you are just a lad compared to who I am in terms of age, but I read your stuff more than any other writer in the Union in all the years I've been stealing UT information for my radio program. So well done, first of all, sir, and nice to have you along today.
Well, thank you so much for having me. Yeah, this shed story has surprised me. I thought it would be popular, but I really had no idea. It's on the front page of CNN.com yesterday, front page of Fox.com, on the Daily Mail in England, and now it's been picked up by Drudge Report. Sometimes I just have no idea how far a story's going to go. I thought it'd be interesting to read, but it's kind of blown my mind.
Have you ever, Philip, have you ever had a story like this go sort of viral like that?
I did one time. I sort of accidentally discovered that the U.S. Army was blocking the Guardian website during the Edward Snowden leaks when I was up at the Monterey Herald. Uh-huh. And that's probably my biggest story of all time. That was in Der Spiegel in Germany and everywhere like that. But this one's definitely up there as in terms of viral stories. So just to tell folks how the sausage is made. When you're on radio and television and it goes viral, you don't get anything but maybe a pat on the back from the program director. There's no money involved in it. Same thing with writing, or do you get a little scooch from every time somebody reads it? No. See? No, actually, this went way. This was sort of frustrating. I don't want to sound too much like a bitter person.
I want you to sound bitter
myself,
because you're a pretty nice guy. I want to hear the down and dirty on this.
Okay. So what happened with the story was I found out someone had sent me the Reddit post, so I didn't just find a listing and decide to write about it. Typically, when I write a story, there has to be a reason for it.
Sure.
I can't just say, here's a listing, how interesting, bang, in the paper. So this kind of gave me an in for a funny story. So I could write a story that says, hey, here's Reddit users are saying that this shed for rent, it's a studio apartment that looks like a shed. And for some may argue it is a shed. But anyways, so I saw that. Someone had sent it to me last week, and I was like, oh, haha, that's funny. Then a couple days went by, and I thought to myself, and it wasn't even immediate. I was like, wait a second, this would make a great story in the Union-Tribune. So I got to work on the story on Monday, and there was interest in it from, say, our newspaper, but it wasn't like, we're getting ready to clear the front page or anything. Now, on Tuesday morning, we ran it online, and it just went gangbusters. It took off like crazy. And I've seen some of our web traffic. It was from readers in San Diego County, which was primarily. So normally if you're on a website, you're getting traffic from, say, all over the world because the story went viral. That's traffic you don't really care about. What you care about is your local market for a newspaper because those are your subscribers.
Well, of course, and part of this story is because it was so localized. You're talking about a rental in University Heights that 200 square feet. Called it. It looks like a shed. I'm calling it a shed. Reddit users called it a shed, and it was pretty frustrating. Talk about exactly what this thing is, by the way. Okay,
so what the deal is there is this 200 square foot detached studio-like apartment It's basically the border of North Park and University Heights, sort of a debate.
I had one of these sheds in my backyard as a kid. This is a shed.
Okay.
We had tools in it.
It's on Oregon Street. I looked up the property records on it, and I was pretty surprised to find it's been rented out off and on at least for 10 years. So it's not like someone recently got this shed at Costco and put it up as a rental. Instead, what had happened was it's actually been used as a rental for a long time.
It's actually not. By the way, if you look inside, it's actually pretty nice. You know, I mean, it's actually not a bad looking place inside, but it's also the size of a postage stamp. That's the problem, right?
Yeah, it'd be really tough. I mean, it's extremely small. That's the biggest thing. You also don't have any parking. Parking is a nightmare over there in that particular area. Whenever I've been. So that would be really tough. Every night you'd be searching for parking in addition to living in a very tiny place. If you're just rolling in San Diego and you need a place fast, it'd be perfect. A lot of people who looked at the listing still, even with that, were saying this is overpriced. So that's
how much is it again? Did we say $1,000, $1,050, something like that?
Yeah. So it was listed for $1,100 a month. So one of the first calls I made was to the property management company on Monday morning, and I got yelled at pretty bad that this was not, how does this rise to the level of the Union-Tribune, and et cetera, et cetera. But to their credit, eventually they decided to talk to me. But in the meantime, after I had hung up the phone with the property management firm, within about 2 hours, they'd update the listing online to make it $10.50 a month. So they lowered it by $50.
So in your opinion, now I don't know if you can editorialize on this or you're just supposed to report on this. And if you can, I understand because I'll editorialize for you. But it does sort of seem like a stretch. I mean, look, I understand the price point, but it does seem a little iffy to me that one could buy a shed at Costco, pour a foundation out back. Hopefully there's permits for the plumbing and the electricity, but I don't know. And if they're, I bet they know now because you shed light on it. But I mean, I don't know if this is where we want to go. I mean, there's a tiny home business that's happening, and I think it's credible. I think the tiny home communities, if they're master planned right, are probably brilliant for those people that want that. We're seeing those things in Austin, Texas. We're seeing communities of tiny homes which are done correctly. This just seems kind of like a scrappy way to make an extra $1,000 by investing. What is it? What did it cost them? $3-4 grand to do that inside there? I don't know. I feel icky about this. Do you have any comment on that?
Well, yeah, I can definitely comment on it. So we know in San Diego County that home building has been down for the past year, for the past several years, arguably for the past decade. And there isn't a lot of area that's been designated for building residential, despite what you might be hearing from a lot of politicians nowadays in California and in San Diego County. It's risen to their political minds that this is something we need to do something about, but there hasn't been any significant change in San Diego County. So that makes, if you own a single-family home with a spot in back to put one of these granny units, I mean, it's almost like you're sitting on gold in a way.
But isn't that the spirit? Doesn't that kill this? But isn't that kill the spirit of that film? You just said to put one of these granny units in, and yes, and that's and by the way, and that's how those things are thought of. But it's not a granny unit; it's a shed. It is literally a tool shed that they're calling a granny unit. I mean, at some point, look, I don't want more government intervention, like I mentioned earlier in the program. I hate that. Yeah. But at the same time, I think stuff gets a little too far when you're allowed to go to Dixie Line and have a forklift in your front yard on Saturday and rent something out on Sunday. And I realized there was more to it than that. And look, truthfully, the photographs you guys took of it, you can tell it's got new floors. It's sort of an efficiency type model. Studios, obviously, or what an average studio apartment is probably 350 to 450 square feet in that area. But it just, for some reason, this shed is a little bit shed. Well, no pun intended. Sheds the light on the problem here in San Diego now, doesn't it? At the end of the day, what's going to happen to these guys? Do you think these guys are going to get knocked on the door and somebody from the city inspector is going to talk to these guys? Oop, I think I lost Phillip. Gosh darn it. All right, well, we're out of time anyway, but the long story short is, by the way, thanks again to Phillip Molnar from the San Diego Union-Tribune. But once again, his article entitled, "Would You Pay $1,050 a Month to Rent This University Heights Shed?" is all over Kogo.com, keyword Sully, as well as you can find it in the San Diego Union-Tribune. But boy, I just think it's a commentary on where we don't want to be going with housing in San Diego. But check it out for yourself, and we can figure it out. We're not going to figure it out for you, but we'd love to hear your comments about it. Okay. Thanks again to Christina Gustin, giving us a little bit of market direction and making us feel a little bit better about ourselves. Patrick DeHaan from GasBuddy.com telling us that the worst may be over and it's just a temporary thing. Of course, Ann Marbarger, Executive Cause Director for Padres Pedal to Cause. GoPedal.org is that website. And Phil Molnar, our regular contributor here on News Radio 600 Kogo from the Union-Tribune. My name is Sully. Catch me at BigBizShow.com or Kogo.com, keyword Sully, and anywhere on social media at Sully on the Air or at Sully Speaks. My whole team and everybody here at News Radio 600 Kogo. Welcome to your weekend, News Radio 600 Kogo.